Champ, sit down. Family, buckle up tight. Because the clip that just detonated across every timeline in the country is not a rap moment. It is a psychological event, and Claressa Shields is standing in the middle of the crater she dug with her own 2 hands. And here's where it turns. The whisper going around the internet right this second is that Claressa Shields, the same Claressa Shields who has spent an entire decade telling anybody with a working set of ears that she is the greatest woman on this planet, just walked into a live radio studio, sat down like a queen, and handed the culture the most self-inflicted 32-second wound combat sports has produced in years. The host did not ask Claressa Shields to fight anybody. The host did not throw a beat under her. The host did not put a stopwatch on the desk and dare her to spit. He asked, in the softest, most polite voice a man can produce before noon, whether Claressa Shields might feel like blessing the audience with a little freestyle, and if the mood struck, whether she might touch on Cris Cyborg. That was it. That was the entire prompt. And Claressa Shields, world champion, self-proclaimed greatest of all time, blinked at him like the man had just recited a page of medieval French out loud. Family, she actually said the words, "You want to freestyle right now?" She said it on tape. She said it on the internet. She said it in a tone that told every single person watching that Claressa Shields was not warm, not ready, not in the mood, and definitely not humble enough to admit any of the 3. And here is where the story stops being uncomfortable and starts becoming radioactive. Because instead of doing the smart thing, instead of doing the champion thing, instead of laughing it off and saying, "Catch me next week, I will come back with something crazy," Claressa Shields decided she was going to lock in. She was going to concentrate. She was going to build a verse in her head right there on live audio, and the camera caught every single frame of that concentration. You can literally watch Claressa Shields try to compose a freestyle the way a woman tries to remember the Wi-Fi password after 3 glasses of wine. Her eyebrows pinch. Her jaw clenches. Her eyes shift to the corner of the ceiling. And for a long, brutal, uncomfortable stretch of silence, the entire room waits for the champion to deliver. And when Claressa Shields finally opens her mouth, family, what falls out is a string of bars so aggressive, so out of nowhere, so violently unrelated to the woman she was actually asked about, that half the internet is now convinced Claressa Shields was not freestyling at all. Claressa Shields was performing a therapy session set to no music. And the therapy session read is genuinely the kindest interpretation available, because the alternative reads are so much worse for Claressa Shields that her own supporters have quietly begun preferring it. Because listen closely. The host said Cris Cyborg. The host wanted a bar about MMA. The host wanted a wink at the fight the fans have been begging for. The host handed Claressa Shields a soft green ball on a tee at knee height, and Claressa Shields swung the bat over her own shoulder and knocked out the umpire. Because instead of Cris Cyborg, Claressa Shields responded with a full, unprovoked, lyrical assault aimed at a woman who was not in the studio, was not in the conversation, and was not even mentioned by name. Claressa Shields rapped about laughing at goofy women. Claressa Shields rapped about somebody being broke. Claressa Shields rapped about being fine and being circled and being wished bad on. Claressa Shields rapped about somebody hoping she would lose. And every single line landed like it had been ripped out of a group chat we were not invited to. Every single bar sounded like it was reading from a diss letter drafted 3 months ago. And by the time Claressa Shields wrapped up her little verse, the entire timeline was staring at their phones with the exact same question burning across every forehead. Who, exactly, is Claressa Shields rapping at? That question hung in the air before the internet began answering it out loud, and once the answer came, it did not leave. Now here is the part one need you to lock in for. Because this is the moment the whole clip flips from awkward to explosive. The internet is not stupid, family. The internet has been watching the Claressa Shields and Papoose situation quietly build for months. The internet remembers when the pictures of Claressa Shields with Papoose first started leaking. The internet remembers when the whispers about Papoose stepping away from Remy turned into full-blown headlines. The internet remembers when Remy dropped a freestyle of her own recently, cold as December, cool as a glass of ice water, and every fan on the timeline nodded and said Remy looked like a woman who had already won a war Claressa Shields did not know she had entered. So when Claressa Shields sat in that radio chair and started freestyling about broke women, about people wishing bad on her, about being called ugly, about being fine as anything, the internet did not need a translator. The internet did the math. And the math, family, kept spelling out one single name. Remy not Cris Cyborg, not any MMA rival, not any random hater on the timeline. Remy And once the math lands on that name, every bar now reads like a return address. And this is the part that turned the clip fully radioactive. Because Claressa Shields was asked to rap about her own sport, And instead, Claressa Shields used her airtime to swing at a woman who was rapping in Bronx ciphers before Claressa Shields ever threw her first professional punch. Claressa Shields sat down on live audio and picked a lyrical fight with the exact same Remy Ma, whose husband Claressa Shields is now being photographed next to. Claressa Shields, on a promotional run for a music platform, used the biggest microphone in the building to shoot at the one woman in hip-hop that fans overwhelmingly say Claressa Shields cannot beat, cannot rival, and honestly should not be poking it right now. And the whole internet caught it in real time. And the whole internet is going to keep replaying it in slow motion for weeks. And then, then came the part that broke the algorithm right down the middle. When the freestyle finally stumbled to a stop and the host tried to gently steer the moment back on track, Claressa Shields snapped. Not rapped. Snapped. Claressa Shields turned to the host with a voice that could peel paint off a wall and told him, straight up, that she is not Papoose. Yes, she said it out loud, on camera, unprompted, with a live mic 3 inches from her chin. Claressa Shields told a man who had not mentioned Papoose, not spelled Papoose, not even breathed in the direction of Papoose, that she was not Papoose. And in that single unforced sentence, Claressa Shields did what 6 months of gossip pages and messy Instagram lives could never accomplish. Claressa Shields confirmed, without saying his full government name, that Papoose is exactly the reason she walked into that studio already loaded. Claressa Shields confirmed, without any lawyer around to cover for her, that this whole freestyle was never really about Cris Cyborg. Claressa Shields confirmed, in front of every executive ear in the industry, that the ghost of Papoose is now sitting on her shoulder like a permanent tenant, whispering into her verses whether she invited him or not. And once a slip of that size hits the timeline, family, there is no publicist on planet Earth who can put it back inside the tube. So listen, this is not just a bad day at a radio station. This is Chapter 9, maybe Chapter 10, in a running saga the culture has been quietly cataloging since the summer. And the saga goes something like this. Claressa Shields, one of the biggest and loudest names in combat sports, has been orbiting Papoose, the veteran New York rapper best known for 2 things, his marriage to Remy Ma, and his lifelong habit of freestyling in the driver's seat of his own vehicle for what feels like an entire decade. And the internet noticed. The internet noticed the walkouts. The internet noticed the appearances. The internet noticed the way Papoose kept showing up at events he had no professional reason to be at. The internet noticed the way Claressa Shields kept posting content that felt just a hair too aware of one particular other woman. And through every headline, every whisper, every, "we are just friends" quote, Claressa Shields tried to hold the line that it was all business and nothing but business. Well, family, the freestyle just snapped that line clean in half. Because you cannot claim you are not thinking about somebody and then walk into a public appearance and throw unprovoked shots at that person's wife. That is not spontaneity. That is not strategy. That is a woman who has been rehearsing this argument in her own head so many nights that when a live microphone finally got close enough, the verse came out on autopilot. And autopilot verses are the most dangerous verses in the entire art form, because autopilot means the artist is no longer choosing the words are choosing the artist. And that is what horrified the audience. The bars did not sound freestyled. The bars sounded lifted. The bars sounded personal. The bars sounded like a woman airing out real grievances at a real person under the flimsy costume of a radio prompt. And every single listener with 2 working ears could tell. Every single commentator with a working microphone said the same thing within an hour of the clip going live. Every reaction channel from the boxing world to the podcast world to the rap world reached the exact same verdict inside the first 24 hours. And that unanimous verdict is what makes this clip so difficult to spin. Because unanimous verdicts do not go away with a good publicist and a nice apology tour. Now hold on to this, because I want to be fair to Claressa Shields where fairness is due. The bars themselves, taken in a vacuum, were not catastrophic. Claressa Shields kept the rhyme scheme steady. Claressa Shields stayed on cadence. Claressa Shields did not stumble, did not lose breath, did not blank. As a boxer freestyling on a cold prompt, Claressa Shields is technically better than the majority of professional athletes who ever try it. But technical competence is not the same as tactical wisdom. And tactically, family, this was a nuclear-grade mistake. Because rap is not only words. Rap is context. Rap is who you are, where you stand, and what your reputation can survive if the response comes back at you twice as hard. And Claressa Shields, standing exactly where Claressa Shields is standing right now. Fans of her hustle. Fans who wanted her to nail the crossover. Fans who have been rooting for the crossover. Those are the people who are now shaking their heads. Because everyone knows what Claressa Shields could have done. Everyone knows the correct move. The correct move was surgical. Rap 8 bars about Cris Cyborg. Say something clever about the weight class difference. Throw a line at the fight the fans have been begging to see. Wink at the camera. Walk out with the entire clip going viral for the right reason. Instead, Claressa Shields threw the whole moment into the fire for the pleasure of firing one unnecessary shot at a woman who was not even in the conversation. Claressa Shields traded a viral win for a viral loss inside the same clip, in the same 32 seconds. It is one of the most self-inflicted PR wounds combat sports has produced this decade, and it happened not in a press conference, not on a weigh-in stage, not in a post-fight interview, but on a routine promo stop that should have been the easiest layup of her entire week. The easy layups are always the ones that break a career, and Claressa Shields just fumbled the easiest layup of the calendar year. And now hold on to this, because the fallout is only just beginning. The clip is already being remixed. The clip is already being reacted to by every major commentator in hip-hop and every major commentator in combat sports. The clip is already being sampled, memed, screen-recorded, and slowed down to the exact frame where Claressa Shields decides she is going to say the Papoose line. And every single one of those reactions is doing the same thing to Claressa Shields' image, one paper cut at a time. Because in the attention economy, family, a woman who tells you she is not thinking about a man has already told you she is thinking about him. And a woman who tells you she is not Papoose in a room where nobody said Papoose has, in one accidental sentence, married herself to Papoose in the public imagination forever. That is not a punchline. That is a permanent tattoo, inked onto her brand in front of the entire internet. Now let me pull the camera back and talk about Remy Ma for a minute, because you cannot understand the full weight of this clip without understanding the woman on the other end of the invisible diss. Remy Ma is not a random rapper. Remy Ma is a Hall of Fame level veteran. Remy Ma is a woman who built her reputation on lyrical warfare. Remy Ma is a woman who already survived a rap beef so infamous that documentaries have been produced about it. Remy Ma is the woman whose pen has forced grown men in the industry to walk away from arguments they thought they were going to win. And Claressa Shields, standing inside a radio studio with no beat, no writer, no engineer, and no plan, decided that today was the day to open a chapter with that same Remy Ma. That is not brave. That is not bold. That is not a champion move. That is, plainly, a miscalculation of historic proportions, and the internet clocked it inside 2 minutes of the clip going live. And once the internet clocks a miscalculation of that size, family, it does not unclock it. It archives it. It timestamps it. It waits for the next receipt to slot in beside it. Now let me take you deeper into the Remy Ma of it all, because this is the piece the casual observer is going to miss, and this is also the piece that makes the freestyle land the way it lands. Remy Ma is not simply the woman married to Papoose. Remy Ma is one of the most feared pens in the history of women in hip-hop, and Remy Ma did not receive that reputation as a gift. Remy Ma earned it in trenches most artists will never step foot in. Remy Ma came up in an era when women in rap were expected to whisper, and Remy Ma refused to whisper. Remy Ma sharpened her craft against giants. Remy Ma survived the industry when the industry was actively trying to swallow her whole. Remy Ma walked out of a prison sentence with her bars sharper than they were when she walked in. And Remy Ma, across the full length of her career, has held one very specific reputation among rap fans, which is that you do not, under any circumstance, offer Remy Ma a freestyle challenge you cannot afford to lose. Claressa Shields, in roughly 40 seconds on live radio, just handed Remy Ma exactly that challenge. And now the culture is waiting to see whether Remy Ma will accept it, or, more devastatingly, ignore it. Because ignoring the challenge from Remy Ma may actually be worse for Claressa Shields than answering it, and I will explain why in a moment. When Remy Ma answers a shot, she brands the target. When Remy Ma ignores a shot, she deletes the shooter from the conversation entirely. Both outcomes are terrible for Claressa Shields, and only one of them is currently being written. And here is another layer nobody is talking about, and it deserves the airtime. Papoose himself, the alleged center of this whole triangle, has yet to say a single meaningful syllable about the Claressa Shields freestyle. Papoose has not confirmed. Papoose has not denied. Papoose has not laughed. Papoose has not cried. Papoose has not subtweeted. Papoose has done the one thing men in situations like this almost never do, which is stay perfectly, suspiciously, professionally silent. And that silence, family, is louder than every horn on Times Square. Because a man who is truly innocent of the whispers would have every incentive in the world to jump on a live and set the record straight. A man who is truly just a friend, just a boxing supporter, just a hip-hop head who admires Claressa Shields' grind, would have every reason to publicly defend both Claressa Shields and Remy Ma in the same breath. Papoose has done neither. Papoose has vanished. And in vanishing, Papoose has left Claressa Shields alone on the mountain with the freestyle clip echoing behind her back. And every commentator online is asking the exact same question. Why is Papoose so quiet? Because in a functional scenario, Papoose would be absolutely everywhere. And instead, Papoose is nowhere. And Claressa Shields, whether she planned it or not, is now doing the emotional labor of a scandal that supposedly involves 3 people, all by herself, on camera, on live radio, in front of every single one of us. And that unequal distribution of the emotional labor is exactly the thing viewers cannot stop pointing at. Because in every messy love triangle the internet has ever tracked, the person doing the loudest talking is almost always the person with the least leverage. And let me take you inside the emotional physics of the room for a second, because this is a detail that only becomes visible on the second and third rewatch. When Claressa Shields is asked for the freestyle, her face does something extremely specific. Her face slides from champion mode into student mode in about half a second. You can see the exact frame where the confidence drains out and the concentration replaces it. And concentration on a freestyle is the enemy, family, because concentration means you are writing. And writing inside a freestyle is disqualifying. The entire art form is built on the appearance of effortless improvisation. And the moment Claressa Shields visibly began composing in her head, the entire audience already knew the verse was going to be preloaded, pre-thought, pre-rehearsed. And what did the preloaded, pre-thought, pre-rehearsed verse turn out to be? A diss aimed at a woman who was not in the room. That is the whole story in one sentence. If you are truly freestyling, whatever falls out of your mouth is a surprise even to you. What fell out of Claressa Shields sounded like a verse that had been living in her chest for months, waiting for a microphone to escape through. And the culture is trained to spot that difference from a mile away, because the culture has watched 1,000 freestyles, and the culture knows to tell the way a poker player knows a flinch. And to twist the knife, Remy Ma has already, according to the fans reading the tea leaves, dropped a freestyle of her own that many believe was pointed straight at Claressa Shields and Papoose. That Remy Ma freestyle was crisp. That Remy Ma freestyle was measured. That Remy Ma freestyle was the kind of thing you drop when you are absolutely certain you own the moral high ground, and you simply want to remind the world you can still swing a pen. And now, right on cue, Claressa Shields has responded with the equivalent of a locker room shouting match dressed up as a promo. The contrast is brutal. The contrast is the entire story. And the contrast is exactly why Claressa Shields cannot walk this one back. Because when 2 women stand on opposite sides of the same rumor, and only one of them delivers with poise, the audience already knew who won before the bell rang. And of course, in classic internet fashion, the receipts are piling up faster than her team can spin them. Because the second the freestyle clip went live, the timeline immediately began digging up every prior interaction between Claressa Shields, Papoose, and Remy Ma. The old photographs, the old walkouts, the old locker room clips, the old interview where somebody asked Papoose about being a fan of Claressa Shields and Papoose gave an answer that landed just a little too warm. The old tweet, the old post, the old like on the old post. All of it is being stacked side by side into one massive receipts thread, and every new piece of evidence is making Claressa Shields look worse. Not because any single item is damning, but because the pattern, family, is undeniable. And the "I am not Papoose" line has become the caption on every single one of those threads. And once a caption becomes the default caption for a receipts thread, it stops being a caption and becomes a verdict. Now, in the interest of fairness, I want to say this out loud. Claressa Shields has never officially confirmed a romantic anything with Papoose. Papoose is technically, legally, still a married man. Remy Ma has never publicly declared the marriage over. Everything I have described, everything the internet has described, is technically a rumor, a whisper, a fan theory, a chain of coincidences that could, in a truly fair universe, be exactly the innocent friendship all 3 parties have always insisted it is. Supposedly. So they say. So they claim. And I have to say it that way because we are not in the business of putting words in anybody's mouth. But I will also say this, and here is where it gets uncomfortable. In the court of public perception, a champion boxer who freestyles is judged not by the boxing world, but by the culture Claressa Shields is trying so hard to be adopted by. And this culture, hip-hop culture, watches everything. And this culture does not miss a single tell. So when Claressa Shields walked into that studio and picked the wrong lyrical target, hip-hop culture responded in the only way it knows how. Hip-hop culture filed Claressa Shields under a very specific and very unflattering category. And it is going to take a lot of extremely careful moves to file Claressa Shields back out again. The culture files fast. The culture unfiles slow. And here is what makes this an especially expensive mistake for Claressa Shields at this precise moment in her career. Claressa Shields is right on the edge of the biggest crossover push of her life. There are conversations happening about a real, on-camera fight with Cris Cyborg. There are conversations happening about massive brand deals. There are conversations happening about an entire new decade of Claressa Shields as a global sports face. And every single one of those conversations depends on Claressa Shields being seen as a serious, disciplined, marketable athlete. Not a woman who freestyles at other people's wives on morning radio. Not a woman who tells a random host she is not Papoose. Not a woman whose entire highlight reel this week is 32 seconds of her fumbling a soft prompt about Cris Cyborg. And the brands, family, are watching. The brands are always watching. The brands do not announce when they walk away. The brands just let the phone ring one fewer time next quarter, and the athlete never even knows the door closed. And I want to zoom in on an angle the mainstream is missing. This is happening at a moment when women in combat sports are finally receiving mainstream attention, and every headline turning Claressa Shields into a rap freestyle punchline is a headline not being spent on the athletic accomplishments women in her sport actually deserve. That is the ambient cost of this clip, absorbed not only by Claressa Shields, but by every young fighter watching Claressa Shields navigate the spotlight. Claressa Shields just delivered a masterclass in what not to do the second the cameras turn on. And the platform matters here. This was not a private conversation. This was Claressa Shields voluntarily walking into a live-streamed, publicly archived setting where every syllable was recorded, clipped, captioned, and prepared for redistribution the second the mic went cold. That is the fight Claressa Shields keeps losing on camera. Not the fight with her opponents in the ring. The fight with her own restraint. The fight with her own impulse to speak first and think second. The fight with her own compulsion to swing at anybody who might, one day, come for her. That is the fight Claressa Shields is losing round after round, and the freestyle was simply the loudest round yet. And the loudest round is usually the round the highlight reels remember first. And here is where the story pivots into something bigger than one radio clip. Because this is not the first time we have watched a champion athlete implode in exactly this way. History is stacked with examples of athletes who reached the summit of their sport, saw the crossover opportunity waiting, chased the crossover opportunity, and then ruined the crossover opportunity by refusing to shed the exact bravado that made them a champion in the first place. Because bravado wins fights. Bravado does not win brand deals. Bravado does not win late-night appearances. Bravado does not win the culture. Charisma does. Charm does. Grace under pressure does. And Claressa Shields, as gifted as Claressa Shields is inside the ring, has repeatedly demonstrated that grace under pressure is the one weight class Claressa Shields has not yet trained for. And the freestyle, family, is Exhibit Z. Not Exhibit A, Exhibit Z. Because the earlier exhibits are already sitting in the archive, waiting for the next supercut. Now, of course, Claressa Shields fans are already crowding the comment sections defending the freestyle. Some are saying Claressa Shields was joking. Some are saying Claressa Shields was warming up. Some are saying the bars were fire and the internet is overreacting. And I hear that. I really do hear it. But here is the counterpoint, and here is why the defense collapses on itself. If the freestyle was harmless, if the freestyle was truly a joke, if the freestyle was truly random, then there is one single thing Claressa Shields never had to say. Claressa Shields never had to say the word Papoose. Claressa Shields never had to defend herself against an accusation nobody made. Claressa Shields never had to open that door. But she did open it. She opened it wide. And once you open that door on live audio, you do not get to close it again. The clip does not forget. The internet does not forget. And Remy Ma, wherever Remy Ma is right now, absolutely does not forget. Because the one person in this triangle whose memory should worry Claressa Shields the most is the person whose career was built on remembering everything and turning it into bars. And I want to say one more thing about that Papoose slip, because I think a lot of commentators are missing the deeper reading of it. When Claressa Shields blurted out that line, Claressa Shields did not only confirm the gossip. Claressa Shields also revealed, in one accidental sentence, exactly how much of her mental real estate this whole situation is currently occupying. Claressa Shields is thinking about it constantly. Enough that the reflex comes out on demand. Enough that a soft prompt about Cris Cyborg gets rerouted through a Papoose defense. Enough that on a promotional run for a music platform, the muscle memory of the argument beat the muscle memory of the pitch. That is what a preoccupation looks like when it is caught on tape. And that, family, is what the internet is really reacting to. Not the bars. The preoccupation. And preoccupations, once they are visible, become the most quoted thing about a public figure until something bigger comes along to bury them. Nothing bigger is coming to bury this one anytime soon. And here is the pattern under the pattern. Look at every appearance Claressa Shields has done in the last 12 weeks. Look at the podcast where Claressa Shields is offered soft entry points and Claressa Shields reroutes them into arguments with rivals nobody named. Look at the social media where Claressa Shields posts, deletes, reposts, and clarifies more times per week than the average PR professional would recommend in a calendar year. Look at the pattern. Claressa Shields is currently operating in defense mode 24 hours a day, and the freestyle was simply the most public version of a habit that has been quietly damaging her brand for months. That is the pattern, family. That is the story sitting underneath the story. And the story sitting underneath the story is always the story that ends up on the documentary 5 years later, because the surface story is the one everybody clicks on today, and the underneath story is the one everybody remembers forever. And here is another layer worth naming out loud, because commentators keep dancing around it. The Cris Cyborg question the host actually asked was, itself, a career-defining opportunity, and Claressa Shields squandered it in real time. A single well-placed line about Cris Cyborg on that microphone could have force-multiplied every promotional dollar the eventual fight will require. Claressa Shields could have said something clever about weight, something sharp about pay, something teasing about the negotiation, something charming about the fans. Claressa Shields had 8 easy bars sitting on a silver plate. Claressa Shields turned away from the plate. Claressa Shields turned toward Remy Ma instead. And once you understand what Claressa Shields turned away from, the size of the mistake stops being about one bad freestyle and starts being about one bad instinct. The instinct that, when handed an easy layup for professional gain, chose personal grievance instead. That instinct is the thing brand strategists will be circling in red pen for the next several months. And here is the last piece I want to leave you with before I open the floor to the comments. And I want you to sit with this one carefully. Claressa Shields has one asset in the crossover economy that nobody else in women's combat sports has right now. And that asset is attention. The whole world is watching Claressa Shields. The whole culture is paying her the courtesy of a second look. That kind of spotlight is rare. That kind of spotlight is extremely expensive to earn. And that kind of spotlight, family, is fragile. You can spend it wisely. Or you can spend it inside a 32-second freestyle at a radio station, on a woman who was not even in the room, for reasons you were not even asked to explain, into a microphone that will replay the moment for the rest of your career. And Claressa Shields, whether she knows it yet or not, has just made the single most expensive spending decision of her media career. The spotlight does not refund. It only remembers. And before I hand the floor to the comments, I have to lay out one more angle, because this angle is going to matter more than any other one in the coming weeks. The Claressa Shields freestyle clip has already begun a second life on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on X, and on every commentary channel in the culture. And every one of those reposts is being scored to different music, cut with different reaction footage, captioned with different jokes, and monetized by different creators. Which means the freestyle no longer belongs to Claressa Shields. The freestyle now belongs to the algorithm, and the algorithm has zero loyalty to anybody. The algorithm will keep serving that clip to strangers for months, possibly years. And every time the algorithm serves it to a new stranger, that stranger will form their entire first impression of Claressa Shields from those 32 uncomfortable seconds. That is the long-tail consequence of one bad promotional stop, and Claressa Shields is going to be discovering that consequence for a long, long time. Because you can win 100 fights in the ring, but if the first thing a brand new fan sees is you swinging at Papoose with no beat on, then that is the Claressa Shields they will always think of first. And that, family, is the unforgiving arithmetic of the modern attention economy. And Claressa Shields just walked into it without a shield. The math on the algorithm is compounding. Every repost stacks on the last, and every stack is another brick in the wall between Claressa Shields and the image she was supposed to be building. And I want to plant one final observation before the CTA, because it is the observation that ties this entire episode into a single knot. Every element of the freestyle, the concentration face, the wandering bars, the unforced Papoose slip, the snapping at the host, the refusal to circle back to Cris Cyborg, every single element points at the same underlying condition, which is that Claressa Shields walked into that studio with unfinished business on her mind and mistook the microphone for a mirror. She spoke to the mirror instead of to the audience. She argued with a woman who was not there instead of promoting a fight the fans do want to see. She defended a relationship nobody had officially accused her of instead of pitching the product she was there to sell. And when you talk into a mirror on live radio, family, the mirror does not talk back, but the audience absolutely does, and the audience talks back for the rest of your career. So here is where I hand it over to you, because this is the part one genuinely want your opinion on, and I mean it. There are 3 possible readings of this freestyle, and I want to know which one lands the loudest inside you. Reading 1. Claressa Shields is quietly telling on herself, and the entire Papoose situation is exactly as messy as fans have been claiming for months. Reading 2. Claressa Shields is being unfairly picked apart, and the internet is projecting a Papoose narrative onto a freestyle that had nothing to do with any of it. Reading 3. Claressa Shields is deliberately baiting a Remy Ma response, because a Remy Ma response would be the biggest promotional wave a woman in her position could possibly buy right now. So which is it? Is Claressa Shields the accidental confessor, the misread victim, or the calculated architect? Tap into the comments and drop your verdict, because I read every single one, and I already know some of you are about to say something that is going to blow this whole conversation wide open. And before you go, one final thought to sit with. Whatever you believe about Claressa Shields, whatever you believe about Papoose, whatever you believe about Remy Ma, you have to admit one thing. This is the single loudest crossover moment Claressa Shields has produced in years, and the algorithm is going to feed on it for weeks. The clip is going to keep spreading. The reaction videos are going to keep multiplying. The Papoose line is going to keep looping. And somewhere in a quiet room, an extremely calm Remy Ma is going to keep watching, keep smiling, and keep saying absolutely nothing at all. Because inside this particular chess match, silence is the sharpest weapon on the board, and Remy Ma has already used it beautifully. Meanwhile, Claressa Shields has traded silence for a viral freestyle, and family, the trade is not looking good. And history, when it eventually writes this chapter down, is going to spend 1 paragraph on the boxing accomplishments and 3 paragraphs on the freestyle, because history remembers whichever clip the algorithm played the most times. And listen, family, if you want more of these deep dive breakdowns where we take one viral clip and unpack every quiet layer inside it, you already know exactly what to do. The next story is even messier than this one, and it involves 2 names you would never expect in the same sentence. Until then, keep your ears open, keep your popcorn ready, and always remember, the microphone hears everything, even the sentences we were praying it would not. Tap into the comments with your verdict, and meet me in the very next one.